The key has vanished. You are certain it was in your bag. You are certain you placed it upon the table. You are certain you did not leave with it in your pocket. And now it is nowhere to be found. You turn the house upside down, look in the car, check the drawer 3 times. You begin to grow irritated, everything is delayed, you lose track of time. And when you finally find it, it was right there, in an obvious place, as if it had appeared out of nowhere. This has happened to you, has it not? Not once, several times, and you likely thought it was distraction, fatigue, or forgetfulness. But what if it was not? What if that key that vanished, that mobile phone you could not find, that document that disappeared on the eve of a journey, had a purpose that you could not perceive at the time? What if the angel who watches over your life used exactly that delay, that loss, that frustration, to remove you from the path of something you never knew was coming? Stay here, because what I'm about to reveal to you today will forever change the way you view the small tribulations of life, and you will finish this video with the certainty that you have been guarded many more times than you imagine. Let us begin with the experience that every Brazilian knows intimately. You are late. You are already late. Traffic in São Paulo, in Rio, in Belo Horizonte, in any capital of this country is unforgiving. You took your bag, your coat, your keys, and the keys are not there. You search your pocket, the counter, the entry table, the bottom of the backpack. Nothing. Accelerated thoughts begin. Irritation rises. You call someone to help search. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You are too late now. And then they appear. Under a piece of paper. In the back of a drawer you open twice. In some place that makes no sense at all. You rush out, grumbling, with the certainty that it was the worst possible start to the day. But what if, in that stretch of road you would have passed 10 minutes earlier, an accident was occurring? And what if that intersection you usually cross on yellow had a drunk driver running the red light at the exact time you would have arrived there? And what if the delay that irritated you was the shield that protected you from something you will never know the name of? You will not know. That is the point. The deliverance that truly works is the one you can never prove, because the protection was so complete that nothing happened. And when nothing happens, we call it coincidence, distraction, a stroke of bad luck. Rarely do we call it by its correct name, grace. Before going deep into this revelation, let me introduce you to something that science has begun to study in recent years with a seriousness that few expected. The name is the psychology of apophenic events. Apophenia is the tendency of the human brain to identify patterns and connections between events that are apparently random. For a long time, scientists classified this as a cognitive bias, a failure of the perceptual system that makes us see meaning where none exists. But more recent research, especially at the universities of Zurich, Cambridge, and Unifesp here in Brazil, is questioning this classification, because studies have begun to reveal something unsettling. In populations with high interoceptive sensitivity, that is, people who have a sharper perception of their own internal states, the ability to identify patterns in apparently random events is associated with better decision-making, more emotional resilience, and greater general well-being. In simple language, people who perceive meaning in events that most classify as coincidence tend to live better, make more assertive decisions, and recover faster from adversities. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung was one of the first to give a scientific name to this phenomenon. He called it synchronicity, the coincidence of two events that do not have a direct causal relationship, but are connected by a profound meaning that transcends conventional logic. Jung was not a man of conventional religious faith, but he was honest enough to recognize that there is a dimension of reality that the science of his time could not measure, a dimension where what we call coincidence may be, in truth, a language, a form of communication between what is beyond and what is here. Brazilian spiritual traditions, from popular Catholicism to Spiritism, from Umbanda to Protestantism, all have a vocabulary for this language. In one it is called a sign, in another a message from the guides, in another the voice of the Holy Spirit, in another the guidance of the Orixás. The names change, the experience is the same. Now I must present to you the three types of deliverance disguised as tribulation, because it is not only the key that vanishes. The instruments of the angel are many, and when you learn to recognize them, your entire life begins to be read in a different way. The first type is the lost object at the critical moment. This is the most well-known. The key, the mobile phone, the document, the card, objects that vanish specifically when you are in a hurry, when time is short, when the delay will cost something real. And here is the paradox that few people perceive. These objects almost always appear. They do not remain lost forever. They appear in a place you have already looked. They appear as if they had been placed there by a hand you did not see. I have heard stories like this hundreds of times. The young woman from the interior of Minas, who lost her phone on the morning of the day she was to take an interstate bus. The bus left without her. She missed the trip. She was furious. 3 hours later, news arrived that the bus had overturned in the Serra da Canastra. She was alive because the phone vanished. The father of a family from Campinas, who lost his wallet with the car documents on the eve of a long journey with his family. He spent 2 days resolving the replacement. He left with a 2-day delay. In the stretch of the highway, he would have passed on the original date. A truck without brakes had caused a pileup of 16 vehicles. I am not inventing these stories. They exist in variations in almost every Brazilian family. You likely know someone who has such a story, or you yourself have one and never stop to view it through these eyes. The second type of deliverance is the providential delay. Here it is not necessarily an object that vanishes. It is a chain of events that conspires to delay you. Traffic that was not predicted. A flat tire at the most inconvenient time. The child who woke up feeling ill exactly on the day you had an important commitment. The alarm clock that did not ring. The rain that made departure impossible. And in the end, after the tribulation, sometimes you discover what was waiting on the path you did not travel. Sometimes you never discover it. But the delay happened, and you arrived whole. There is research published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology that investigated what researchers called near-miss experiences. That is, experiences of near accidents, near losses, near tragedies. The discovery was that people who consciously recognize they escaped something negative, even without knowing exactly what it was, present a profound reorganization of priorities, greater gratitude, lower anxiety in the face of small problems, and an expanded perception of the value of their own life. In other words, recognizing the deliverance changes you, even if you never know the name of the danger that passed. The third type is the door that closed. This is the most painful of all because it does not seem like protection. It seems like rejection. The job you wanted very much and did not get. The business that did not succeed despite all your efforts. The relationship that ended when you did not want it to end. The house you tried to buy and the deal fell through. The university entrance exam you did not pass. Each of these events hurts in a specific way, and the pain is real. I am not minimizing this, but the question that must be asked is not, why did this door close? The question is, what was on the other side of that door that I did not need to encounter? Sometimes the answer takes years to appear. Sometimes it appears in weeks. Sometimes it never appears explicitly. But it exists, and when you begin to see closed doors as deliverances disguised as rejection, your relationship with disappointment changes completely. Because you stop interpreting the no as abandonment and begin to interpret it as redirection. But now comes the question you are likely already asking internally: how to know the difference? How to distinguish what was deliverance from what was simply bad luck, carelessness, or the consequence of something I caused myself? That is an honest question, and it deserves an honest answer. Not every lost key is a deliverance. Not every delay is protection. Not every door that closes is divine redirection. Sometimes the key vanished because you were tired and did not pay attention. Sometimes the delay was the consequence of poor choices. Sometimes the door closed because you needed to develop something you did not yet have. And recognizing the difference is part of spiritual maturity. It is not naivety to attribute divine meaning to everything. It is wisdom to learn to read the signs without falling into the trap of superstition. There are 4 questions that help identify if what happened was a deliverance. First question: was the intensity of the tribulation disproportionate to the situation? When an object simply vanishes from an obvious place and later appears in the same place without logical explanation, this is not a common pattern of forgetfulness. Forgetfulness has a trail. You vaguely remember where you left it. Deliverance has no trail. The object simply was not where it should have been, and later it was. Second question. Did the generated delay have real and verifiable consequences? I'm not asking if you knew what was on the path, because often you will never know. I am asking if the delay itself was real and substantial, if you missed a segment, an hour, a commitment. Because deliverance is not a minimal disturbance, it is enough to change your timing in a real way. Third question. Was there a specific physical sensation during the tribulation? Many people report this. A strange calm in the midst of irritation, an internal voice saying that everything is fine, even when everything seems wrong. An inexplicable lightness after the object appears, greater than the simple relief of having found it. This is not definitive proof, but it is a sign. Fourth question. Did you discover later by chance what could have happened? Sometimes life delivers confirmation. You learn of the accident that happened in the stretch you would have traveled. You discover that the person you were to meet was going through something that would have placed you in a complicated situation. You hear on the news what happened that day in that place. When this happens, the sensation is unmistakable. It is a shiver and gratitude mixed together. Let me tell you about Donna Cleide. She is 53 years old, lives in Belo Horizonte, and has worked as a nursing technician for 25 years. On a Monday, she woke up early as always, prepared coffee, took her bag, and went to get the car keys. They were not where they always were. She searched the bag. They were not there. In the jacket, they were not there. She called her husband. Both searched for nearly 30 minutes. Nothing. Donna Cleide is accustomed to routine. She does not lose keys. She even has the habit of always placing them on the same hook. The hook was empty. She had to go by bus. She arrived 40 minutes later than usual. When she arrived at the hospital, she heard from colleagues that in that stretch of Avenida Pedro II, which she traveled every day, a serious accident had occurred at 7:30 in the morning, exactly the time she usually passed through there. A car lost control and mounted the sidewalk. 3 pedestrians were injured. A car driver passing the site had his vehicle struck and sustained minor injuries. She told me that when she heard this, she needed to sit down. Not from the emotion of the shock, because the shock had already passed, but from the emotion of perception, because she understood at that moment that the keys had not vanished. They had been kept. When she arrived home that afternoon, the keys were on the hook, in the same place as always, as if they had never left. Now I want to speak about something that goes beyond keys and objects, because what is at stake here is a way of viewing the whole of life. There is a dimension of Brazilian spirituality that is deeply intuitive. The Brazilian, perhaps more than any other people in the world, has an intimate relationship with what is not seen but is felt. It is no wonder that Brazil is the country with the most people who identify with some form of religiosity on the planet. It is no coincidence that our popular culture is full of stories of protection, of miracles, of deliverance. This intimacy with the invisible is not ignorance, it is heritage. It is the living memory of populations that survived what seemed impossible to survive. From the indigenous peoples who inhabited these lands before any colonization, passing through the Africans who arrived in chains and yet kept their spirituality alive, to the immigrants from all parts of the world who arrived with nothing and built family, history, and faith in this land. Brazil was built by people who learned to feel what is not seen. And this capacity to feel the invisible is not wrong. It is being confirmed by science, slowly, with the humility of one who discovers that what seemed irrational has, in truth, a rationality that goes beyond the measurement instruments available today. In 2023, research published in the scientific journal Nature Human Behavior revealed that humans have an innate capacity for processing subliminal information that operates far below the level of consciousness. The brain processes up to 11 million bits of information per second, but consciousness has access to only 50 of those bits. The remainder is processed non-consciously. This means that your body, your nervous system, your intuition, have access to information that your conscious mind cannot process, and that what you call a premonition, a malaise without reason, an inexplicable calm in a moment of crisis, is not superstition. It is information processing that happens in layers you cannot access directly. When we combine this with the spiritual perspective, the picture becomes even richer, because if your body and your nervous system already operate in dimensions beyond consciousness, how much more would a being of a spiritual nature, an angel, a guide, a force of light, existing in dimensions that completely transcend matter, be capable of influencing physical events, apparently trivial, to protect that which was placed under its guard? The key that vanishes is not magic. It is administration. It is the invisible field operating around your life, doing what you cannot do for yourself because you cannot see what lies ahead. Are you still here? Then I need you to go now to the comments and write deliverance. Tell also, if you wish, a story of a lost object or a delay that you later realized was protection. These accounts are testimonies, and testimony has power. It has the power to open the eyes of those who are reading and still cannot recognize the grace operating in their own lives. If this video made sense to you, if it touched something you knew but did not know how to name, subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell, because what is coming in the next weeks will continue this journey of recognizing the invisible that operates in your visible life, and you will want to be here. Now 3 concrete practices to activate the perception of deliverances in your daily life. The first practice is what I call the diary of what did not happen. Most people record what went wrong. Rarely do they record what did not happen, and it is precisely in what did not happen that deliverances remain hidden. Starting today, once a week, you will sit for 5 minutes and make a mental or written list of the things that could have gone wrong and did not. Journeys that arrived safely, conflicts that did not escalate, illnesses that did not develop, accidents that did not happen, situations that were charged with destructive potential and that, for some reason you cannot fully explain, did not explode. This practice is not about paranoia, nor about imagining dangers that did not exist. It is about training the gaze to see the protection that already operates in your life, and that you tend to ignore because you are accustomed to focusing on what went wrong. Research on applied gratitude, conducted by Martin Seligman's Positive Psychology Laboratory at the University of Pennsylvania, shows that people who practice regular recording of positive events and situations of protection, not only of achievements but also of deliverances, present a reduction of up to 42% in anxiety levels and a significant increase in the general perception of well-being. Gratitude for what did not happen is as powerful as gratitude for what did happen. The second practice is the pause of resignification. Every time an object vanishes, a delay occurs, a tribulation appears at the worst possible moment. Before entering automatic irritation, you will pause for 5 seconds and say internally, "It could be a deliverance." Just that. You do not need to be certain. You do not need proof. Only the openness to the possibility. This pause does not eliminate frustration, but it creates a space between the event and your reaction, and it is in this space that spiritual perception operates. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Auschwitz concentration camp and founded logotherapy, wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and that it is in this space that our freedom and our growth lie. The pause of resignification is the exercise of inhabiting this space intentionally. The third practice is the prayer of recognition, not a prayer asking for protection, but a prayer recognizing the protection that already exists, not a prayer of necessity, but a prayer of perception. It can be simple. It can be like this. Thank you for what passed by me without striking me. Thank you for what was diverted before arriving. Thank you for the key that vanished, for the delay that came, for the door that closed. Thank you for guarding what I do not know how to guard alone. This is not resignation. It is recognition. And recognition opens the channel for more protection to arrive, because a person who recognizes the grace that already operates in their life becomes more permeable to the grace that is yet to come. Before closing, I want to leave you with an image that I hope stays with you. Think of a shepherd tending the flock. He does not wait for the wolf to arrive and attack before acting. He acts before. He knows the dangerous paths and diverts the flock before reaching them. The flock does not know it was in danger. The flock only saw that the shepherd changed the path. And perhaps they even complained that the new path was longer. You are the flock, and there is a shepherd who knows the paths of your life much better than you do, who sees what is ahead before you arrive there, who sometimes redirects you by the longer path, not out of neglect, but out of care. Not to delay you, but to protect you from what is in the shortcut. The key that vanished did not leave the scene. It was held by hands you do not see for long enough for the danger to pass. And when the danger passed, it returned to the same place, as if it had never gone. You are guarded more times than you can count, on days that seemed normal, on mornings that seemed unlucky, in situations that seemed merely everyday annoyances. The angel does not need special conditions to act. He needs common objects. Keys, mobile phones, traffic jams, flat tires, alarms that do not ring. He uses the ordinary to produce the extraordinary. He uses the mundane to operate the sacred. He uses what you can touch to distance you from what could destroy you. And every time you find the key in a place you have already looked, instead of grumbling about your distraction, try giving thanks. Because perhaps that key did not vanish. It was kept. And you with it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that the tribulations of life sometimes have a purpose that goes beyond annoyance. That the hand that guards is greater than the difficulty that appears. That your angel is not absent on your worst mornings. He is present in ways you will understand later, when you look back and recognize the grace that operated in silence. The key that vanished was the angel working, and you will never look at a lost object the same way again. Until next time,